Here are some other tools to determine if the property is serviced by a septic tank or connected to the sewer system. Check the building permits for the property in the city or county where it is located. If a septic tank was installed, there should be either 3 or 4 distinct permits in the file. Checking building permits typically is done in person at the city or county facility where records are stored. Check the public report that was originally issued. The seller might have a copy of the report, or the builder-developer. And if the public report was issued after January 1, 1997, that report is possibly on the ADRE website. Have a plumber or the city conduct a dye test. While the plumber will charge for this service, the city generally does not charge. A dye test is a visual test that involves one person pouring dye down a drain and another person in the street, removing the manhole cover, and watching for the dye. This should not be conducted by amateurs, such as the homeowner or their agent. Have a septic inspector or plumber check for either a septic tank or a sewer connection. A plumber will often snake a camera down a sink or toilet to see if the snake goes into a septic tank or the sewer line. The first 2 options will take some time, but will not cost anything, while the second 2 methods will cost some money. In either case, it is prudent to be certain before making a representation that you have not verified on an item that is warranted by the seller to be accurate. That warranty survives the close of escrow if the AAR residential resale purchase contract was used, meaning that whatever the seller discloses in the contract still stands even years later if the buyer determines it was incorrect. If the buyer determines that the property has a septic system and is not connected to the sewer, they will probably look to the brokers, in addition to the seller, to cover the cost of connecting the home to the sewer line and properly abandoning the septic tank. If you make a false representation about a sewer connection to a buyer and the buyer determines this after close of escrow, it almost certainly will cost everyone time, aggravation, and money. Seller not obligated to buyer if home is not connected to sewer issue. In the 2 years that the seller owned the home, the seller paid monthly sewer bills to the local municipality. Therefore, in the SPDS and in the contract, the seller represented that the home was connected to the sewer. After close of escrow, the buyer discovered that the local municipality was erroneously sending monthly sewer bills because the home had a septic tank and was not connected to the sewer. Is the seller liable to the buyer for damages because the home was not connected to the sewer? Answer: probably not. In the contract, the seller warranted that any information regarding sewer connection was correct to the best of seller's knowledge. See Contract, Section 5B. Inasmuch as the seller had been paying monthly sewer bills to the local municipality, the seller probably believed that the home was connected to the sewer. Furthermore, the contract states in bold and capitalized print that, if sewer connection is material to the buyer must make an investigation during the inspection period. See Contract, Section 6F, initialing required by buyer. Therefore, the buyer probably has no claim against the seller for damages because the home is not connected to sewer. REO seller required to have inspection of the septic tank issue. The REO seller addendum provides that the buyer, not the seller, shall conduct an inspection of the septic tank at the buyer's cost. The Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, however, requires the seller to have an inspection of the septic system within the 6-month time period before closing on the sale of a home. See AAC R18-9A3116. Is the buyer now required to conduct the septic tank inspection? Answer: probably. If the seller and the buyer agreed in the REO seller addendum that the buyer would conduct this inspection, the buyer is required to do the inspection. The buyer will also have to pay for the cost of this inspection. Note: AAC R18-9A316 does not require any certification and does not require that any repairs be made. In other words, even if the septic system needs major repairs, the buyer's only remedy is to cancel the transaction if the buyer does not want the home. Note: the AAR on-site wastewater treatment facility addendum should be used in any transaction involving a septic tank. Buyer can cancel when undisclosed septic tank is discovered. Facts. The buyer went through the inspection period and is set to close in 2 weeks. The property has a septic tank on it, which the seller disclosed. The seller now orders the septic tank inspection. The septic tank company notifies all parties that there are 2 septic tanks on the property. The seller did not know about the unused abandoned tank, but updated the SPDS upon learning of the abandoned tank. The buyer does not want to close unless the seller agrees to have the abandoned tank removed. Issue. Can the buyer cancel if buyer discovers there is a septic tank that was not disclosed? Answer. Probably. Discussion. A seller has a duty to disclose facts materially affecting the value of the property that are not readily observable and are not known to the buyer. See Hilvers-Jones, 151, Errors 81, 725, P2D 1115, Apper 1986. Although the buyer could have confirmed there was a second septic tank during the inspection period, the seller still has liability for failing to disclose the second septic tank. See Barnes v. Lopez, 25 Arizona, App. 477, 544, P2D 694, App. Par. 1976. Seller still liable for zoning misrepresentation, even though buyer could have confirmed correct zoning. Therefore, the buyer may cancel under Section 4F, which provides the buyer a 5-day opportunity to disapprove of the updated SPDS and cancel. Note: there is a correct process to abandon a septic tank if it is no longer used. Each county in Arizona has a form available online regarding how to abandon a septic tank properly. Seller has to replace the septic tank issue. Under the AAR On-Site Wastewater Treatment Facility Addendum, the seller agreed to pay for repairs up to 1% of the purchase price to correct any deficiencies in the septic tank. The septic tank inspection report says that due to massive leakage, the septic tank cannot be repaired but must be replaced. The cost of replacing the septic tank is less than 1% of the purchase price. The seller contends that under the addendum, the seller is only required to repair the septic tank, not replace the septic tank. Does the seller have to replace the septic tank? Answer: probably. If repairs will not correct the massive leakage in the septic tank, and the cost to replace the septic tank is less than 1% of the purchase price, the seller probably has to replace the septic tank.